Hi friends! Somehow I tried to repair the device of high frequency current and inspecting power IGBT modules in my hands. Then an idea came to my mind. Many years I've been working with IGBTs and still have not made a video on them. Yes, in different videos I talked about the different characteristics of these switches, what, where and why, but there was no separate large and at the same time simple and understandable video. Let's fix it today. Because training videos aren't popular and it isn't profitable to make them, I ask, if possible, to share this video with friends on social nets, comment and rate it. So now, about everything a beginner needs to know about IGBT transistors. The fact that transistors are bipolar and field effect, many people know. But what is IGBT type which suddenly appeared and why was it invented at all? Created and patented by the American company International Rectifier, now Infineon, in the 80s, IGBT was conceived as a more perfect replacement for a powerful thyristor and bipolar transistors in control of power circuits of industrial machines. In simple terms, the IGBT is a kind of mixture of bipolar and field effect transistor. It has a gate, like a field one, and a collector-emitter junction, like a bipolar, often named too as a channel. IGBT can be considered as a bipolar power transistor, which is controlled by a built-in field effect transistor. In fact, there is other strapping inside such transistors, but we will skip all this. Why it was necessary to cross these two transistors and what does it give? Field effect transistors have a lot of advantages. Unlike bipolar ones, they are controlled by voltage, not current. That is, in order for the field effect transistors to fully open and pass huge currents through the open channel, it is enough to apply an unlocking voltage of an average of 10 volts to its gate. This switches with a logical level of operation, but mostly FETs open at 10 volts. That is, simply apply 10 volts to the gate, the switch opened completely and you pump as many amps of current as you want through it. Well, actually, not as much as you want, but within the calculated maximum. If the voltage applied to the gate is less than 10 volts, the transistor isn't fully open and operates in a linear mode. That is, a large amount of heat is generated on it. So, we applied 10 volts and the switch opened. Moreover, the control signal current can be negligible, milli or even microamps. Therefore, serious complex drivers are needed to unlock the field effect switch. But a driver is still needed for another purpose, but more on that later. When the field effect switch opens, its open channel resistance is negligible and is calculated in milliohms. That is, an insignificant amount of heat is released on the transistor itself in a fully open state. Here you need to notice a nuance. Field effect transistors with higher voltage has the greater resistance of its open channel. Also, unlike a bipolar transistor, field effect transistors have very high input impedance. Knowing the flowing current and the resistance of the open channel RDS on, it is easy to make a calculation of the released power according to Ohm's law. The bipolar transistors aren't controlled by voltage like field ones, but by current. What does it mean? In order to make the bipolar transistor pass through the junction, say 10 amps of current, we need to pour a certain current into its base, and this current depends on the current gain parameter HFE or H21E. For example, if the transistor gain is 100 and we need to pump 10 amps through each junction, therefore the base current must be 100 times less than the junction current, that is 100 milliamps. The current gain shows how many times the collector current is greater than the base current. Powerful power transistors with a current of tens of amperes have a lower gain compared to low power ones. Here are old high-power bipolar transistors with a current of hundreds of amperes and a real gain of about 10 to 20. Just imagine that such a transistor would pass 100 amps. You need to pump a current of 5 to 10 amps into the base. Accordingly, a powerful driver is needed that will draw such currents. Bipolar transistors have one more minus. They have a voltage drop across an open transistor, that is, at the collector-emitter junction. It is more compared to field ones. These parameters are denoted differently. In the case of field switches, this is the open channel resistance measured in ohms. And in the case of bipolar switches, this is the collector-emitter saturation voltage measured in volts. In the technical documentation, the manufacturer indicates these values and provides graphs of the dependence of this parameter on the flowing current. This is one of the main reasons for the heating of transistors when operating in the switch mode. That is, so far field effect switches are cooler than bipolar. But then why don't we turn to field effect ones? We have already done that. All electronics, all processors, memory cards, everything works on CMOS logic based on field effect transistors. But still, bipolar transistors also have advantages, in particular higher voltage than field ones. For example, you will not find ordinary field effect switches higher than 900 volts. Yes, there is the exception of FETs based on silicon carbide. But this is generally a separate issue and these are expensive and not yet popular. But bipolar ones are up to 3000 and above volts, and therefore in industry, for example, for powerful engine control systems and so on, they were indispensable before the advent of IGBT. Now I want to tell about our sponsor, GLCPCB, which is producing printed circuit boards of any size, shape and layers. The company also offers services for industrial 3D printing, the creation of soldering stencils for soldering SMD components, and the assembly of circuits. The link to the company's website you can find in the description. So, bipolar ones have their advantages, field ones have their own. Some can operate at very high voltages but have more switching losses and are controlled by the base current. Others are controlled easy and no current is needed for this. They have less losses in the switch mode, but instead they have a speed limit and most importantly cannot be very high voltage. In general, scientific engineers decided to cross a hedgehog with a snake, and in the end they actually got a barbed wire called IGBT. Why barbed wire? Everything is simple. Both the advantages of the previously mentioned switches and all of the main disadvantages have migrated to the IGBT. Imagine a transistor that has a power transition of a bipolar transistor and instead of a base, a gate like that of field effect transistors. This is the IGBT or insulated gate bipolar transistor. Everything is cool. We have a bipolar transistor which, like a FET, is controlled by the gate voltage. This is definitely a plus. Also, our new transistors can be high voltage like a bipolar one. This is also a plus and that's all. The pluses are over. IGBTs have become even slower to switch than power MOSFET or field effect transistors, have much higher switching losses compared to FETs and even bipolar ones. Initially, they were conceived to work in power controllers for motors of industrial machines, i.e. frequency converters, inverters and so on. Such things didn't work at very high frequencies, so everything was fine. Modern manufacturers are striving to reduce the cost of their products, especially when it comes to pulse technology, all sorts of welding inverters and so on. To reduce the cost, you need to reduce the size of both the case and the electronic filling, and this must be done without compromising the characteristics of the device. This can only be done if the switching frequency of the switches in the inverter is increased. Therefore, as a rule, all subsequent generations of IGBT switches are made slightly faster than the previous ones. But there are certain limitations. Firstly, a well-known fact is that very high voltage IGBTs with a collector emitter voltage of 2,000 to 3,000 volts are less fast compared to lower voltage samples of the same generation. Secondly, the faster the transistor, the more expensive it is. And thirdly, the more powerful the transistor, the harder its control. Well, now let's figure it out in order. The main parameters of IGBT switches are the collector emitter voltage in volts, the maximum collector current in amps, the collector emitter saturation voltage in volts, the gate emitter voltage in volts, and perhaps the power dissipated by the package in watts. The first two parameters are generally basic for most semiconductors. They show the maximum allowable voltage and current. The other parameter, saturation voltage, is the voltage drop across an open transistor. This has already been mentioned. The smaller the value, the less the heating of the switch. But the trouble is that with an increase of the current flowing through the transistor, this drop increases. The gate emitter voltage is the maximum voltage that can be applied to the gate relative to the emitter. That is, the maximum voltage of the control signal. Here again, it's worth to say that this is a partially field effect switch and the law of 10 volts applies. The transistor itself will start to open from a few volts, but for normal operation you need to apply more than 10 volts to the gate, but not more than the maximum allowable value. Of the secondary, but anyway important parameter, we note the gate capacitance. It's measured in farads, or more precisely in pico and nanofarads. This parameter is actually very important and relevant for FETs. This minus migrated to the IGBT from FETs. The gate of a FET is like a capacitor. The more powerful is the transistor, the greater the capacitance of this capacitor. In order for the transistor to fully open, it is enough to charge its gate by applying about 10 volts, but to close it, you need to discharge this capacitor. To close a bipolar transistor, it is enough to remove or turn off the unlocking signal, but with filled ones, such a trick will not work. You remove the signal, but it is still open until you discharge the gate capacitance to ground, moreover completely. For reliable operation, in order to avoid false working, it is necessary to close the gate to ground and leave it in this state until a second control pulse appears, which should open the transistor. This is exactly why gate drivers are needed. These nodes are designed to correctly control the gate, mainly to close the switch. The higher the operation frequency of the IGBT or field switch, the steeper the driver must be. It must be able to securely close the switch in a unit of time. For example, in welding inverters, this process occurs tens of thousands of times per second. The next important parameters of the IGBT are time characteristics. It is that they determine the speed of the switch and are the most important when replacing transistors with others in pulse circuits. In general, with an increase in the operating frequency, the switching current fall. The switching losses increase, needs a more serious driver. The snubber circuit designed to protect the transistors dampen more surges per unit time. So each new generation of transistors in its speed characteristics doesn't differ much from the previous ones. There are several switching timings. The first is turn-on time. Let's say you have a control pulse with a duration of, for example, 1 nanosecond, and you apply it in the hope that you will open the IGBT, but it won't open because the turn-on time is, let's say, 10 nanoseconds. The fact is that the transistor works with a certain delay, that is, not immediately after the signal is given, but with some delay. There is also the concept of rise time. This is the time during which the transistor opens from 0 to maximum. The turn-on time is the sum of the delay time and the rise time of the signal measured in microseconds or nanoseconds. Turn-off time is the time during which the transistor closes after the main control signal is turned off. Often the turn-off time of the transistor is much longer than the turn-on time. In push-pull bridge or half-bridge circuits, the control system or control driver must provide the so-called dead time. The fact is that when the control pulse is over, the transistor needs time to close completely, the turn-off time. And since it is longer than the turn-on time, the transistor of the second arm may open by the time the first one isn't yet completely closed. In this case, there will be a short circuit and a failure of the switches. Therefore, dead time is introduced. That is, the first transistor is closed, then there is a short pause during which the both transistors are closed and only after that the second transistor opens. This solution also gives the control driver extra time to fully discharge the gate of switch, ensuring it is fully locked. The duration of the dead time depends on the frequency of the inverter and on the parameters of the selected transistors. This is actually the idle time due to the control pulse, and if it is made too large, then the power of the inverter is reduced, because the control pulses are shortened and the transistor's open state time is reduced. Regarding the on time and off time, there is one more nuance, or rather two. Firstly, in the technical documentation, the manufacturer indicates this parameter for a specific gate resistor. There are also graphs of the change in time characteristics depending on the resistance of the gate resistors. It is clear that switching on and off is not an instantaneous process, and if we stretch the front and back edges of the signal, we will see a curve. It is in these areas that the transistor operates in a linear mode. Although these processes don't last long compared to the total pulse time, it is still a linear mode and the transistor heats up precisely in these intervals. Therefore, the longer the turn on and turn off time of the transistor, the greater the heating. In IGBTs, you can often see power diodes in parallel with the channel. These diodes are built into the transistor itself and are switched on in reserve, usually for protective purposes. There are IGBTs without these diodes, but in the case of FETs, these diodes are almost always present and are a side effect of the technical process, that is, no one puts them there on purpose, they are formed by themselves when the crystal is created. So, if the IGBT has a built-in diode, then its characteristics are important, which manufacturers also indicate. This diode has a reverse voltage, current and turn-on time, just like the crystal of the transistor itself. In fact, in many cases, for example for field effect transistors, the heating of the switch is to a greater extent associated not with the transistor crystal itself, but with the indicated diodes when operating on a certain load, which has EMF emissions. These surges are damped by the mentioned diodes, as a result of which the transistor heats up. So these diodes can cause incomprehensible heating. Well, the same is true in the case of IGBTs. IGBT can be single in the form of separate transistor and modular, the so-called bricks. IGBT modules are made on a massive copper substrate, the crystals themselves are fixed on a ceramic base, and the module is filled with sealant. These power modules can be for different currents and voltages and contain either one or several transistors. There are modules in which a pair of IGBTs is already connected according to the half-bridge circuit. There are also bridge modules or single ones for single-ended circuits. These modules are different in realization. They can be designed for current from tens to thousands of amperes. They are used in power frequency converters, induction heating devices, welding inverters, and so on. They are mainly used in industrial devices and not in domestic ones. What can be said in summary? IGBT is a transistor with all the advantages and disadvantages of field effect and bipolar transistors, plus it has its own quirks. They are slower and have more switching losses. Like bipolar ones, they have a voltage drop across an open transistor, and this drop is still quite big and doesn't even come close with FET switches. FETs has much less losses. Parasitic gate capacitance, long turn on and turn off times, and more other are disadvantages. Yes, they are for higher voltage than field ones, and it would seem that an ordinary bipolar transistor could well do everything that an IGBT does. It could, if not the collector current, which depends on the base current. Imagine a bipolar switch operating at frequencies of tens of kilohertz and currents of hundreds of amperes. How much current you need to pour into the base and how quickly? In the switch mode at frequencies from several hundreds hertz to several tens of kilohertz, IGBTs are still indispensable when it comes to high voltages. In low voltage inverters, MOSFET transistors are the top. There are much less losses and therefore more conversion efficiency. Field effect transistors based on the silicon carbide have already appeared. They can simultaneously be as high voltage as bipolar ones, but at the same time has a low open channel resistance and have a rather small gate capacitance. Silicon carbide seems to be the near future. Such transistors are already used and have tangible advantages, but alas, so far they aren't pleased with the price, so they didn't wide popular at the time of this video. That's all today. Please share this video, rate it and comment. You will find all the additional information in the description. Now I say bye until we meet again. As always, with you was Kasyan TV.